Happy New Year, everyone. Grab a cup of coffee. You're in for a great episode this month. I'm going to hit on two changes that have happened here in Michigan as of January 1st, one related to minimum wage, the other an unemployment claimant benefit increase. Then we're going to talk a bit about ESTA, a few lessons learned, some ideas if you're looking to change your ESTA program a bit, and then two announcements from HRM that you don't want to miss. Let's get to it. Hello and welcome to the new year. This is the January edition of HR Hot Topics. I'm your host, Jodi Schafer, and you may have noticed a new look for 2026, a slightly new intro, and even a little audio precursor to what the video contains. You know, we're always innovating here at HRM. We don't want it to get stale. We want to keep your attention. So this month I wanted to hit on a couple of things that are changing that are connected to just the time of year. So in Michigan, we've had two changes as of January 1st. The first is an increase to minimum wage. So minimum wage has increased from $12.48 here in the state of Michigan to $13.73 as of the 1st. We also have an increase to the maximum unemployment insurance benefit that a claimant could receive. I know I did a whole video on the unemployment system, how it works, how people are paid, all of that in 2025. So if you have questions on unemployment, I would encourage you to take a look at that video. It's housed on our HRM website in the resources section. But one of the things that happened last year is that legislation was passed that would provide for automatic increases to the maximum claimant benefit amount every year, and that at a certain point it would tie to the rate of inflation. So here we are on January 1st. The rate has increased for 2026. It is now $530 a week. That's the maximum benefit a person on unemployment could receive. That's up from $446 in 2025. So that will be for any claims that are filed in 2026, that max of $530 per week. Any claims that were filed in 2025 but might have a tail that's happening, kind of following it into 2026, those are under the 2025 rate of the $446. So these are just for new claims filed this calendar year. Claimants will see an increase in that benefit. And then another change that's happening in unemployment in the state of Michigan happens in July of this year. One of the things that is required for any person who is on the unemployment system is they have to prove that they are looking for work. And this is in order to get their benefits every week. They have to do a work search requirement and then document, those efforts. And right now, it's one work search activity per week, and that's going to be increasing in July of 2026 to 3 work search activities per week. How they'll track that and how they'll enforce that remains to be seen. But that's good news, I think, for employers who are a little worried about folks staying on state benefits longer than perhaps necessary, especially if there are jobs that are needing to be filled. So there is a work search component, and it is increasing come July. So those are two things that are kind of time-bound for January of 2026 here in Michigan. Another thing I just want to circle back on, we've been getting a crazy amount of calls around ESTA. And if you'll recall, ESTA stands for Earned Sick Time Act. This is a Michigan-specific paid sick leave law. It had two different effective dates, both of which were last year. The first was February 21st of 2025, and that was for large employers, large with like a wink, because it's anyone with 11 plus employees, which for those of you that have 11 employees, you certainly don't feel very big, but from the standpoint of this law, you were considered a large employer. So February 21st was your effective date. And then for small employers, 10 employees or less, October 1 of 2025 was your effective date. And as you can imagine, it's a tricky law to kind of get your head around and to really understand what the requirements are, and then to figure out how you're going to make your existing policies mesh with the requirements in a way that is least disruptive to your team, to your platforms and tracking systems, your workflows, all of that. Employers have been doing their best throughout all of last year to try to comply with ESTA, but we continue to get many, many calls around this. Because you think it's going to work one way and then you actually start to implement it and then you think, oh no, I wish I had set this up differently. So I bring it up only because here we sit at the start of a new calendar year. And for some of you, you might decide you want to make a change to how you are implementing ESTA. And you can do that. You're not locked into how you set this program up as of your effective date last year. You can make a change on a go-forward basis so long as all of your staff know about the change in advance and so long as the change still meets the minimum requirements under ESTA. So, for example, perhaps you went to an accrual basis last year because this struck mid-year and you were already on an accrual basis, or maybe you had separate banks of time for sick and vacation and you didn't want to go through a bunch of rigmarole of combining banks, et cetera. And so perhaps you just went to accrual for ESTA on the sick bank side and kind of let the dice fall where they may. And but now you're thinking about it and maybe the tracking has become burdensome for that. And maybe you want to make a shift to front load. You can do that. And the start of the calendar year is a really nice time to do that. One of the things that we got clarification on recently, and this might be of interest to you, it's almost like a hybrid approach where an employer has one bank of time. Generally, it's called PTO, paid time off. You can use it for sick, vacation, personal, whatever. And they want to have both a front load component and an accrual component for that one bank. So perhaps they want to front load a portion of the PTO bank at date of hire or January 1 or wherever the start of your benefit year is. And then they want to award the remainder of the bank on an accrual basis or maybe in a lump sum, but later on in the year. Perhaps they don't want to give a whole year's worth of paid time off in one shot. Can you do that and still be compliant with ESTA? And the answer is yes. You can actually have these like hybrid award systems even when those hours sit in one bank of time, so long as the award system that you're connecting to the ESTA portion of those PTO hours meets the minimum requirements under law. So there are some nuances to that, but I just thought that was a really interesting clarification. And so again, if you're trying to figure out whether or not your ESTA program's working for you, and whether or not there are some changes you might want to make, just know you might have a bit more flexibility in that than you originally thought. And if you need help thinking through any of those kind of pros and cons, you're welcome to contact our team. Andy Kramer on our team has really been running point on all ESTA-related concerns, including all handbook updates related to ESTA. So if you need help, we can certainly do that. Two things that I want to leave you with here for the month of January. They're both updates on the HRM side. So the intro is not the only new thing happening at HRM this year. We have our training calendar. As you know, a few years back, we started hosting in-person trainings, and we typically host 4 of those throughout the calendar year. That training calendar will be published in the coming weeks. That will be a standalone email that you'll all receive if you're on our email list, so be sure to join that. But you'll get the dates, the locations, all of it. The first of those in-person trainings will be in April here in the Lansing area. We will do leadership training, session 1, session 2. We plan to do that every single year. And then probably a compliance-related training in the fall. It could be HR 101, it could be handbook make and take, we're not quite sure yet, but a compliance one in the fall. And then something of a bit of a different flavor in the summer. So we'll publish that whole calendar, we'll send it out, you'll see it in the next few weeks here, so keep an eye for that. And then finally, something we have not done before, we are going to be sending out a client survey. We're going to be surveying folks that have worked with us in the past 2-ish years. We're going to do our best to kind of mine our client database and really drill down on that. But the last 2-ish years, we're really interested in your feedback around, did we meet your needs? Were we responsive in our communication? Did you feel like the collaboration was valuable? Did we meet your expectations around professionalism and subject matter expertise? all things that we care very deeply about here at HRM, so we would love your feedback on that. And then the other piece of the client survey is really gauging interest in a couple of new programs that we are considering. One of which we sort of soft launched in 2025, and that's our outsourced HR service model. We'll describe a little bit more about that in the coming months, but essentially we are now offering fully outsourced HR for clients that are a good fit for what we can do there. So we've got room to take on about 5 to 8 new clients in the outsourced category this calendar year. So we'll be asking if anyone has interest in that. It's kind of a niche, for us, but certainly a service that we know is needed, and we'd be happy to partner with you if you think that could be of value to your company. And then we're also looking at a subscription model, really focused around leadership. And how do you take folks that are fairly new to leadership, and aside from just sending them to training, which is great, but as we all know, training does not create change. Training creates awareness, but how do you then continue to hold somebody's hand through that leadership training, the leadership journey outside of training? And that's really where I think HRM can come alongside and provide some really valuable resources in kind of this steady, predictable cadence throughout the course of the subscription, whether that's a year, 2 years, kind of in infancy, really kind of, playing with that. So on the survey, we'll be asking some questions around that and to see if that would also be of value, but be thinking about training your leaders in your organization and whether you think that could be helpful. And if so, we'd love to hear what you think should be included in that so that we can build it out with intention. So with that, I will leave you. We'll pick you back up in February. Happy New Year to all of you. And look for those 2 things, the training calendar, the client survey, and we'll circle back next month. Thanks.